In a twist of fate, a timid young woman was forced to marry my sister's blind millionaire fiancé. Little did I know in this unexpected darkness, a love would bloom daring to defy lies and judgment. No one asked if I agreed. My mother gripped my wrist, dragging me toward the wedding dress that hung like a glittering trap. Her hand was ice cold, but her voice cut through the air with fury. Celeste isn't coming. You have no choice. Walk down that aisle now. The tiny dressing room seemed to cave in on itself. The scent of expensive perfume, the click of heels, whispered orders from assistants, and the frantic knocking from the wedding coordinator. It all hammered against my skull. I said nothing, not because I agreed, but because my throat had closed under the weight of my mother's glare. If this wedding falls apart, we'll all be begging in the streets. Your sister can't marry him, so you will. You owe me that. Her voice was sharp as a blade, and Celeste, my sister, stood at the door, arms crossed, face cold as stone. She offered only one sentence, dripping with contempt. You always dreamed of being the bride, didn't you? Then play the part to the end. No one asked what I wanted. No one cared how I felt. The decision had already been made. The dress was steamed. My name had replaced Celeste's on the marriage license, and the groom, the blind man waiting at the end of the aisle beneath 100 watching eyes, I was still standing there, Lucian Drake, blind wealthy, proud handpicked by my family as a financial windfall. A man too valuable to resist, too blind to see the deception. For the past 6 months, I had spoken to him over the phone under the name Celeste. My voice trained daily, my tone, my laugh, even my perfume, all rehearsed until perfect. Because as my mother once said, Celeste doesn't have time for sentimental nonsense. And now I was about to marry him in a wedding broadcast live beneath candlelight and stained glass at St. Vincent's Cathedral in front of the press. The elite and a groom who couldn't see but could feel everything. I walked the aisle like someone stepping into an abyss. The gown had been shoved onto me in 10 minutes, my makeup done in 6, my shoes crammed on just as the wedding car pulled up. Lucian stood like a statue face. Serene posture, impossibly firm. His blind eyes were half closed, head tilted slightly as if listening. No one knew what he was thinking. No one knew if he could sense the switch. The minister asked, Valeria Quinn, do you take Lucian Drake to be your lawful husband in honor and love and in duty until death do you part? The air turned to ice. I didn't dare look up. In the distance, I saw my mother nod once. Saw Celeste's smirk curl at the corner of her mouth. I do. My voice cracked. Lucian tilted his head. He didn't speak right away. Then almost instinctively, he turned toward me. His voice was low. Why are you shaking? Are you afraid I'll see you? For one fleeting second, I knew he wasn't joking. He had felt something. When the thunderous applause erupted, I knew I'd gone too far to turn back. I smiled, not out of joy, but because the camera was zooming in and Celeste was watching from the back row wearing the smug expression of someone who had just won a cruel bet. I told myself it would only take a day, just enough time to fool the crowd, sign some papers, and disappear from the life of a man I wasn't meant to marry as if I had never existed. But those words echoed in my mind like a bad line from a poorly written role. They didn't convince me. They didn't soothe the tightness in my throat. The cold ring on my finger still felt new, and before I could even register the weight of my own hand, I was already in the car, sitting beside my legal husband, a man I'd never seen, but whose every breath I had memorized. As the door shut behind us, I glanced over my shoulder. St. Vincent's Cathedral was now just a faded smear of light behind tinted glass. Ahead of us was darkness, and in that darkness, Lucian didn't need eyes to know I was trembling. The Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled away slowly, gliding through quiet, dimly lit streets toward the Drake estate, tucked away in the northern outskirts of the city. Lucian sat straight, hands interlaced, eyes closed as if sleeping. But I knew better. He wasn't sleeping. He was listening, not to the world outside, but to my breathing. The rustle of silk, the soft tap of my shoe against the floor. He was recording it all like composing a silent symphony in his mind. I stayed silent, trying to breathe evenly. In my head, images of my mother and Celeste loomed, faces tight with satisfaction, eyes like surveillance cameras tracking my every move. From now on, I would live with Lucian as his wife. No slips, no stumbles, no forgetting a single detail Celeste had ever shared about herself. And yet the moment I stepped into the Drake estate, everything began to unravel. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a gallery curated by a blind architect. Flawless but lifeless. The lights were dim, the doors glided open on their own, the flowers were fresh but scentless, the walls were lined with black and white photographs, not a single portrait. The butler bowed. Congratulations, ma'am. Lucian gently placed a hand on my back, guiding me into the dining room. No words, no welcome toast, no celebration, just the quiet overhead lights casting shadows across a long, endless dining table. Two white porcelain plates, no flowers, no candles, no music. Lucian took his seat. I sat across from him, hands resting lightly on my gown. Then he spoke. His voice was soft as smoke, but sharp as glass. Your voice, it's different. I flinched. Different. Softer, slower, a slight rasp at the end of your words. Celeste didn't have that. I steadied myself. Maybe I'm just tired. It's been a long day. He nodded, then inhaled slowly as if the air itself held secrets. And the perfume, if you're wearing a different one? I winced. I forgot to put on the usual. Lucian nodded again, saying nothing this time, but the air between us thickened like he was reading every molecule my words left behind. Dinner passed in silence. I forced myself to eat, but the food tasted bitter. Lucian ate methodically, every motion rehearsed. When I tried to rise from my seat, his voice stopped me. Do you remember our first phone call? I froze. What did we talk about? He continued. I told you about Paris. You told me about your cello. I pressed my lips together. I had no idea that was Celeste before she lost patience with what she called this old-school romantic nonsense. I had only stepped in halfway through. Oh, right, I said I wanted to open a bookstore by the lake. Lucian tilted his head. No, she never said that. I froze in place. Lucian set down his fork, his fingers brushing his napkin like ending the final note of a somber song. It's fine, he said. I have a very good memory. Sometimes so good it makes people uncomfortable. I didn't answer, just stared into my water glass, wishing it was something stronger. I hadn't expected the blind man to see so clearly. That night, I entered the bedroom. Wide, cold, immaculate, but no room for emotion. The space between the two pillows felt endless. Lucian lay on his side, turned away. I lay on the edge of the bed, afraid to move. The wind slipped through the cracked window. I stared at the ceiling. Tears falling silently. Then Lucian's voice came quiet, not directed at me, but piercing through every inch of space. I don't need eyes to recognize a lie. I didn't know who he meant, but that sentence struck something deep inside me. Maybe the scariest part isn't being found out. Maybe it's being understood so thoroughly, so intimately, that there's nothing left to hide. So, what do you think? Is Lucian suspicious or already certain? Is he waiting for me to confess? Perhaps the answer isn't in what's said, but in the gaze of a man who never needed sight to see the truth, and you keep playing the part or take off the mask when the other person was never blind to begin with? After a night spent sharing the same room but feeling worlds apart, I couldn't sleep. I counted every time he shifted, listened to every breath as if trying to figure out whether this man hated me. But Lucian did nothing, no accusations, no questions, no touch. His silence wasn't indifference. It was a wall, thin, soft, but cold as ice. I thought I'd be exposed. But the next morning, Lucian still treated me like his lawful wife. I began to live in his world, a world of quiet, of precision, without noise or chaos. And in that silence, something unexpected began to happen. I started to want to stay. I used to think the silence in this house was the worst part, but then I realized maybe it was my presence that was changing things. Little by little, I woke earlier, went into the kitchen to make breakfast the way I'd learned he liked it from tips the assistant had whispered to me. I stopped calling for the staff. I cleaned and rearranged his study, a room left untouched, sealed in silence since the accident. Lucian didn't ask anything. He simply touched the edge of the desk, the bookshelf, the pen holder, and said nothing. But that night, he asked quietly, "She never stepped into this room." My breath caught for a beat. I knew who he meant, Celeste. I said, "I know, I just wanted to make it a little more comfortable for you." Lucian didn't respond, but his fingers curled tightly around the wooden armrest. That afternoon, they walked together in the garden for the first time. Lucian let me lead him without his cane. The breeze was gentle. I described the flowers slowly purple, lavender, white daisies, hydrangeas beginning to wilt. He didn't interrupt, but then asked, "You don't tell me about orchids anymore?" I froze. That had been Celeste. Celeste had once spoken to him about orchids, not me. I thought maybe today the other flowers deserved to speak. I whispered. Lucian smiled for the first time, but it wasn't a peaceful smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they realize they're speaking to a different soul. Night fell. A soft amber glow filled the living room. Only the wind through the windows and the soft creak of wood remained. I sat and read to him, not Shakespeare or Bronte like Celeste once had, but a gentle, quiet novel. Lucian didn't comment, but he tilted his head, his breathing deepening. "Your voice," he said after I stopped reading, "it's warmer. The way you touch me is softer. Even your silence, it feels different. I put the book down, my hands tightening on the armrest. He turned his face toward me, blind eyes yet unflinchingly direct. If you're someone else? He paused. I think I might like you more. I didn't respond. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to believe it was a confession, but maybe it was a quiet unveiling, a gentle way of saying, I know. And in that long, tender silence, something began to stir. A little care, a little fear, a flicker of something unnamed between two people bound in a strange marriage, one who couldn't see and one who had never been truly seen. That morning, I sat alone in the old study I had just finished cleaning. Sunlight spilled across the wooden floor, glinting off picture frames that held no photos. I didn't know why I was there, maybe because it was the one place no one ever entered. Maybe because for the first time, I wanted to just be myself, even if only for a few stolen minutes. The door burst open. No knock, no warning. Celeste walked in like the house belonged to her. Behind her came our mother heels striking the floor like a ticking death sentence. We need to talk, my mother said. I sat up straight, trying to stay calm. About what? Celeste didn't answer. She strolled around the room, fingers grazing the wooden desk, before picking up a book, then tossed it back with a sharp cutting thud. The thing is, you're getting a little too deep into character. I stayed silent. The maid says you make breakfast for Lucian, take him on walks, sit by his bed reading every night. Celeste let out a mocking laugh, shaking her head. Seriously, Val, dial it back. Did you forget who you were supposed to be pretending to be? My mother cut in, her voice slow and venomous. You really think he's going to marry you again? He belongs to Celeste, to this family, not to you? I looked up. Meeting their eyes for the first time, I wasn't angry, but something softened quietly in my gaze. He's not who you think he is, I said. Celeste laughed loud and cruel. Not who we think he is. What, not some blind fool, easy to manipulate? I clenched the edge of my chair. He's kind, he's perceptive, he deserves to be treated with decency, no matter who loves him. The room fell into a rare moment of silence. My mother raised an eyebrow, looking at me like I was a child who had just spoken a fantasy aloud. You really think he cares about you? Her voice turned to ice. You're a placeholder, Valeria. He doesn't know who you are. He loves Celeste. And if he finds out the truth, what do you think he'll do? Celeste added, twisting the knife. You think he'll forgive the woman who impersonated someone else or spit in your face for lying next to him under my name? I pressed my lips together, but this time my eyes didn't well up. I stood faced them both. If he finds out and he chooses to walk away, I'll still know I did the right thing, because at least I never treated him like a transaction. The two women froze for just a moment, then my mother spoke like casting a curse. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is love. You're borrowing a place that was never yours, and when I take it back, you won't have the right to cry. The door slammed behind them. I stood still. I had never fought back like that before, but the strangest part was, this time I wasn't afraid. All that remained now was a single question. If Lucian knew everything, would he see me as a betrayer or the only one who ever treated him with honesty? When the door closed behind my mother and Celeste, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. But something inside me cracked, not a shattering quake, but a slow, quiet fracture, like someone carving away at the last layers of trust I had left. I left the room and wandered down the long hallway to the back. The sunset was fading. The final light of day slanted through the sheer curtains, painting the garden in a pale orange hue, delicate, fleeting like me. I sat at the edge of the porch where the sun's last rays were slipping beneath the trees, swaying in the wind. I hugged my knees to my chest as if they were the only thing keeping me from falling into the endless black void inside me. My mother's voice still echoed in my ears. Celeste's laugh folded into it like a cruel whisper in a locked basement. You're just a second-rate copy you don't get to love. I hadn't fought back as much as I'd wanted. I'd only managed one sentence. He's a good man, and somehow that was enough to make my mother laugh as if she'd just heard a cheap, ridiculous joke. I buried my head in my arms. My tears no longer fell in waves. They came one by one, heavy and slow, like my heart wasn't beating anymore, just bleeding. Behind me, there was the faintest sound. I didn't need to turn around. Lucian. He sat down beside me. No questions, no words, just silence. But it wasn't empty. It was thick, weighty, full of everything neither of us could yet say. After a long moment, his voice came low and steady. Have you ever wished you were someone else? I looked up. The question pierced straight through my ribs. Yes, I whispered, every day. Lucian nodded slightly without judgment. Then he leaned in, his hand reaching out to touch mine. Not to hold, just to touch, like he needed to make sure I was still there. If one day I get to see you, he paused as if tasting the weight of his words. I'm afraid I won't want to look away. I turned toward him, aching to meet his gaze, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. He couldn't see me, and yet in that exact moment, I felt more seen than ever before. I tried to say something, but my throat burned. My heartbeat stumbled. My words dissolved into breath. Lucian didn't wait for a response. He pulled his hand back, stood slowly. The breeze tousled his hair across his forehead. You know, he stopped his back to me. There are some things you can only see without your eyes. Then he walked away, leaving me alone with the last trace of sunlight and a heart beginning to tremble with something that felt dangerously close to breaking free. Lucian didn't go back inside right away. He stood beneath the awning for a while, his back still turned as if weighing something, whether to speak or carry the thought with him forever. At last, he spoke quietly, slowly, but enough to stop my breath. Tomorrow, I'm going to the hospital. I looked up, startled. He turned slightly, not quite facing me, but his voice was bare without armor. There's a doctor in Switzerland, an experimental procedure. They say the odds aren't.